Hey, good morning. Here, last time we were together, we were talking about the Greeks, and once again, we're going to spend the entire class period talking about the Greek society. During our last class, I mentioned to you about a new type of infantry formation, which is called phalanx. You need to recognize that. We talked about Sparta, the type of government that they had. They had two kings. Athens, the type of government that they had, too, which was quite a bit different than that of Sparta. We also mentioned two wars. One of the wars that took place was called the Persian War. The other war that took place was the Peloponnesian War. All right, so let's get into our class for today here. We need to finish this class. When we come in for the next class session, we have to talk about another group. We'll actually get started in that group today, the Hellenistic Society, and then you're going to have your examination, your first examination. So by now, the material started to mount up on you, so you got to stay abreast of it anyway. All right, before I forget it, I wanted to share this with you, and this is not a very appropriate time to put this in, but we'll try to do this. Most of you probably are familiar with what is called Delphi. Some people pronounce it Delphi. Delphi, and this is where the oracles were. These were the oracles that were the gods that would speak to you and give you advice. But anyway, it's a popular place to visit today if you go to Greece. Let me go back to my document, or go back to my map here, and let's see if I can show it to you on the map itself. And that's where it is located here. You can see it marked in red here. Athens, of course, is over there. But if you're going to Greece, be sure and work that into your plans to visit there. All right, now, I want to go back to my camera here. And one of the things so closely associated with the ancient Greeks is that of the Olympics. And the Olympics, which began in 776 BCE, we think that was the first date of it. Since that time, the Olympics have been held in Athens on two different occasions, 1896, and then it was held again in 2004. You may remember the United States Olympic marathoner, Meb, and Meb was second in that event in the marathon. The marathon, of course, is 26 miles. It represents approximately the same distance from Marathon to Athens, which was 24.8 miles. But later it was extended. They had the Olympics in London, and the king desired that the marathon finish be at the palace, and so it was extended to 26.2 miles here. Now, in the original Olympics, there was only one event, and this event, which was called a stadia. Now, a stadia is a sprint. It's a foot race. It's a race that goes for 185 meters, so it'd be about 180 yards, something on that order here, 190 yards, but a stadia. And then as the Olympics would continue, and these were strictly a male affair, the females were not permitted to observe this, but as it continued, then a stadia became two events, and it was like two stadia. So in other words, you would have a 185-yard sprint, and then you would have a second event, which was two stadia, which would be the doubling of 185. In other words, we run one circuit of 185, and then there would be a second one. Likewise. Now, where this took place, it took place in Olympia. Now, Olympia was a sanctuary of Zeus. Let me go back to my map here, and I have not been to Olympia. It's located right here. It's in the little area province here of Elis. I've not been there. My daughter has been there and actually had the opportunity to run on the track itself, what remains today. I want to share something with you here, which, let's see here, I'm having a contrast problem here. But anyway, the ancient Olympic Games, and you can see photographs of the ruins that are present there. Not uncommon to see these orange and blacks here. This portrays a group of runners participating in, I guess, a stadia there. That's kind of interesting there, that association with Athens. Today, if you visit Athens, you can go by the old Olympic Stadium there. It's not open to the public, but one side of it is open where you can actually stand on the streets there and you can actually look into the stadium itself. By the standard, the University of Alabama or Auburn, it is not very impressive in comparison to that. All right, let's see what else we need to talk about here. And I want to move into an area, and we'll spend a good bit of time here talking about philosophy. And there we go. And if you translate this word, philosophy, Sophy means wisdom or knowledge. And if you ever see the word root phileo, it means to love. So to love wisdom, to love knowledge. All right, and the Greeks were very, very good with this. And let's go through several of these groups here. And one of the first ones was that of the pre-Socratics. They existed or lived around the year 600 to 400 BCE. They questioned the nature of the universe, the ultimate meaning of life. One of the most pronounced, well-known of the pre-Socratics is that of Thales. Thales predicted a solar eclipse in 585 BCE, and he believed that the basic founding substance of life was that of water. All right, so that's one group there, the pre-Socratics, or in other words, before Socrates. Okay, we have another group here, and these are Pythagoreans. Pythagoreans, they were followers of Pythagoras. You probably are familiar with Pythagoras, at least you've heard that name here when you were in a geometry course or an algebra course here. But Pythagoras was from Samos. I'm not going to flip the document camera back again. If I can remember, I'll show you next time I go back to the map here to show you where Samos is located. I showed it to you the other day. But Pythagoras, he lived in Samos, but he moved to Croton to avoid the Persian invasion there. Croton, of course, is on the southern boundaries, if you will, of the Italian peninsula. And for the Pythagoreans, they believe life is good, but for you to fully enjoy life, you must be thoroughly cleansed of all earthly, fleshy desires, whatever that means. So you'll have to just think about that yourself here. Pythagoras also developed the Pythagorean theorem. If we were in class now, I would challenge a couple of you to identify the Pythagorean theorem. Now, basically what it is, the square of the hypotenuse of any right side triangle is equal to the sum of the squares of the opposite two sides. All right, and then we have another group here, and these are the sophists. These are the sophists. If we translate the word, those who are wise, those who are wise. And one of the best known ones was that of Protagoras. Protagoras lived in Athens. Man is a measure of all things. Goodness, truth, and justice are relative to the basic needs of individuals. Okay, so out of the sophists, which may have been atheists or agnostics or anarchists, out of the sophists, we're going to see another philosopher emerge, who is Socrates. All right, now, let me check in your textbook here, and in your textbook, if you're following on page 106 in your textbook, you can actually see a likeness here of Socrates. Socrates was from Athens. He had served on 2 occasions as a hoplite soldier, so that means that he was present within a phalanx. I'm not sure if he ever went to war or not, but this is Socrates. Socrates. Okay, so I don't want to leave Socrates right now because we have got a lot to discuss with him. Socrates was born in Athens in the year 469 BCE, and he died, and I'll tell you how in just a little bit here. He died in the year 399 BCE. That was during the times of the Peloponnesian War. But anyway, here. Now, Socrates wanted to question every slogan in order to build a life based upon ethic certainties. He believed that truth is real and that absolute standards do exist here. He also believed that the unexamined mind is not worth living. Look inside yourself. Look inside yourself on how you can better yourself and how you can better society. One of my favorite thoughts here with Socrates is that the educated person knows that he knows very little. It is the uneducated person that thinks he knows everything. And it's only when you achieve an education and strive for an education, you actually realize how little that you actually know. Now, I'll probably step on some toes here, but that's okay. I don't mind doing this. I give this in my face-to-face lectures, too. I know this person. Let's give him the name here, Ricky Bobby. And I bet you know a Ricky Bobby in your life. Ricky Bobby thinks that he knows everything. He has never been to college. I don't even know if he graduated from high school, but he thinks that he knows everything. If you want to know anything about Roll Tide football, he can tell you about it. If you want to know anything about NASCAR, you want to know anything about Atlanta Braves baseball, he can recite all these statistics. But Ricky Bobby is limited, and that is all he knows. Never been in a classroom. He is at the University of Alabama. When he goes to a football game there, he is what you would call a sidewalk alumni. You know, never been in a University of Alabama classroom, but he wears all the University of Alabama attire. And you know what I'm talking about with that. Shirts, sweatshirts, caps, and all of that. And Ricky Bobby just doesn't realize how ignorant he actually is. And that's what Socrates is saying. As the unexamined mind is not worth living. Look inside yourself on how you can help society here. All right, let's go back to my documents camera here, because here we have Socrates here. And Socrates, by the way, and I shouldn't have taken the camera off of me, but Socrates and Peloponnesian War, many of the other citizens of Athens felt like that Socrates was introducing new gods and also corrupting the youth. And Socrates was given a choice to leave Athens or to take poison. And the way the stories go anyway is that he chose to take poison and take hemlock here. All right, and now another philosopher who was actually a student under Socrates was that of Plato. Plato, born in the year 429, and he died in the year 349 BCE. For Plato established the academy. The academy was something that most of my students would very much appreciate. You have no tuition, there's no textbooks, there's no curriculum. It's just we'll go out under the trees here and we'll just share thoughts with each other here. Now, Plato spent his entire life trying to vindicate Socrates. He wrote a series of dialogues, and these dialogues such as Republic and Symposium, Phaedo happened to be one too. He also developed his doctrine of ideas. Relativity and change are characteristic of the world that one perceives with their senses. But this is not the entire world. Relativity and change are characteristic of the world that is around us. But that's not the entire world. I don't keep up with sports. I don't have interest in the sports here. But it's my understanding that the football season, college football season, pro football season, pro basketball is going to be extremely limited here. It doesn't affect me at all. It may affect you very, very strongly here. But let me ask you this. Do you think Auburn football and Alabama football is important to a German? Do you think it's important to a person that lives in Paris? Relativity and change are characteristic of the world around us. But that's not the entire world. All right, now that is Plato here. All right, so let's go back to our camera here. And our next philosopher is that of Aristotle. Aristotle was Greek. The dates here of his life, 384 to 322 BCE. He was one of Plato's students, one of his best students. He made careful observations of nature. He believed in the objective reality of material things. He studied a great number of subjects: logic, metaphysics, ethics, politics, which is a means to the end. He developed the golden rule: courage rather than rashness or cowardice, temperance rather than excessive indulgence here. He also developed the syllogism. Did I write that? I did write the syllogism. The syllogism is reasoning in which certain premises will inevitably lead to a valid conclusion here. Let's give you an example here. All mammals are warm-blooded. Dogs are mammals. Dogs are warm-blooded. We can draw our conclusion from that, too. All right, back to our camera we go here. And another individual, and this is not a philosopher here, but considered to be the father of scientific medicine, Hippocrates. When physicians take their oath, they take the Hippocratic oath here. Now, for Hippocrates, the father of scientific medicine, he believed that the body existed in four humors: yellow bile, black bile, blood, and phlegm. The body exists in four humors. Every disease has a natural cause. Without that cause, there is no disease. And what Hippocrates felt is that any illness was an imbalance of one of these four humors in the four humors. All right, so let's continue here. And some other Greeks that bear noteworthiness here. The father of history. And I wish you'd recognize this. Obviously, in a history course, we need to recognize that individual that is designated as the father of history. Herodotus. You've heard me mention his name on a number of occasions here. The father of history. Herodotus. Now, for Herodotus is also considered to be the father of anthropology here. He questioned the Persian War. Why was it fought? Why did it end the way that it did? another philosopher. And good luck on your spelling, even better luck on trying to get your pronunciation down on Thucydides. Thucydides, who was a historian. He wrote a history of the Peloponnesian War, trying to determine the causes of human social diseases. Another historian, Xenophon. And I think that's in one of your video clips here. Xenophon, who lived with Spartans, lived in Sparta for a period of time here. He wrote about the memories of Socrates and so forth here. All right, now we move into Greek literature. And Greek literature, which is most amusing, and personally I love this too. The two most famous pieces here are the Iliad, the Odyssey, written by blind Homer around the year 750 BCE, addressing the topic there, the Trojan War that took place around 1250, 1200. We're not really sure of the dates here. I'm not even sure if it actually took place. But when blind Homer, if he wrote this, and he may not have written the Iliad and the Odyssey, is it true? Is it not? I don't know about that. Let me share a couple of books with you. Perhaps you've read this fascinating story before, which is known as the Iliad. The book that is written, the movie that is made out of this, the Iliad, is very, very good. The one with Brad Pitt in it, which is Achilles. And that's the story. It's about Achilles. And then we have the other one here, which is the Odyssey, which is about the homeward journeys of Odysseus, and following the Trojan War here. Quite frankly, I find this book to be more fascinating than that of the Iliad, even though I like the Iliad very much too. All right, so anyways, that's Greek literature. Okay, let's talk about lyric poetry for a second here, because the Greeks were very, very good with this. And this was poetry that was sung to the music of a lyre. Now, a lyre is a musical instrument here. If you look at the bottom photograph here, I've got a couple of likenesses there of Aphrodite and Zeus. But if you look at the bottom here, this lady is holding, it kind of appears to be like a miniature harp, but that's what it's referred to as, is a lyre. And so in lyric poetry, this is poetry that is sung to the music, recited to the music of a lyre. And the principal most person associated with this is a lady by the name of Sappho. Now, Sappho lived in the island of Lesbos. Let me go back to my map here, and let's see if I can get this to lighten a little bit. And let me try to find the island of Sappho, Lesbos for you. That's where Sappho lived. Before I forget it here, let's turn this where you can see this. And I mentioned a few seconds ago about the island of Samos, where Pythagoras was from, which is one of the Greek isles. But the island here of Lesbos, this is Lesbos, and that's where Sappho lived with her circle of female homosexual friends. So figure it out here. The island of Lesbos, female homosexual friends, and I shall go no further with that topic. All right, back to the camera we go here, folks. And another thing we have here is that of tragic drama. And this is a fascinating subject with this, too. It was invented by the Athenians. It was performed at an outdoor theater. Use your textbook for this. It will demonstrate it far better than the photograph I'm going to show you here. But you had such magnificent theaters as Theater of Epidaurus, Theater of Dionysus. I took this photograph. This was taken in Ephesus, Turkey. If I can get the contrast to go well. And this theater here is small potatoes in comparison to that of the theaters that you'll find in Athens itself here, which are about 3 or 4 times the size of this. Now, what you do, and use your textbook illustration for it, but where the performers perform is down here. Now, they use masks, and these masks are like megaphones, like a cheerleader's megaphones. Now, you usually have three to four principal characters there. If you have a female, the female is portrayed by a male, and they wear these masks, and in changing characters, they just change the mask, so it stays the same cast, but you just have people changing their mask with that too. And you'll usually have 12 to 15 people that will be in the background, and I'm talking about back here, and that's like a chorus group, and that's what is known as a chorus group, and they chant poetic lines in unison. So it's kind of like if you were watching a movie and we have background music, it's somewhat like that. But by using these megaphones that are built into the mask, then it is said anyway, that even if you're on the topmost row, and this is not impressive here, but if you look at the theater of Epidaurus, you will be 5 times this size, 4 times this size, that a whisper spoken on stage can be heard back all the way up in the very recesses up here at the top here. And I find that to be absolutely amazing with that. Now, the tragic drama ends with a plot that inspires pity or fear within the individual. And what you're supposed to receive from this at the end is kind of a melodramatic catharsis, a cleansing of the soul, of well-being within your body. Now, some of the best known of the tragic dramatists, your literature teachers, I'm sure, have exposed you to Aeschylus. Aeschylus, it doesn't look like it would be pronounced that way, but that's the way it is pronounced. Who wrote Persians, Agamemnon, The Triumph of Good over Evil. Sophocles, you probably have studied Sophocles before. Sophocles, Oedipus the King, Oedipus, Colonus, Antigone, Ajax, Electra. Another of the tragic dramatists is that of Euripides, with Acestus, Medea, Electra, Helena, Trojan women. All right, so anyway, that's that. Now, another thing that the Greeks are so closely identified with is that of Greek comedy. And one of the best known of the Greek comedians is Aristophanes. Work on your pronunciation with this, Aristophanes. He was an Athenian playwright, Greek comedian. He was replete with slapstick, satire, absurdity, vulgarity, crudeness, and he would often lampoon the leaders in Athens itself. Hence, he was often ostracized and forced out of Athens. Some of the things that he would write, he wrote about Lysistrata. Lysistrata, and remember, this is humorous here, it's slapstick, in which women refuse to have sex with their husbands until they all return from war and stop the ridiculous war. In a satire upon the females, the girls, if you will, of Sparta. Goodness, my dear, you look strong enough to throttle an ox. Or in another situation here where Aristophanes was explaining Socrates. Socrates explains thunder as the gods farting in the clouds. Well, sorry for that, but that's just kind of the slapstick vulgarity that you would see to come out of the mouths, if you will, of Aristophanes. All right, now I'm going to thumb through the pages a couple of seconds here, and let's. I don't want to go back to the camera to me yet, but Greek sculptures. And if we look at the Greek sculptures here, and make a comparison with the sculptures that you found, back in the times of the Egyptians, and now we look at the sculptures, that found with the Greeks. This is highly naturalistic here. And if you look at the sculptures here, notice we have the well-proportioned bodies here, the arms that are straight down, the arms that are bent at the elbows here, but just generally plain figures with that, but quite an advancement over that of the Egyptians. Now, when we get into the next section here with the Hellenistic society, I'm going to ask you to go back in your memory and make comparisons between these Greek statues and that of the statues of the Hellenistic society, which are much, much more elaborate with that. All right. Now, another thing we had, and I don't have a photograph of this, I showed you one the other day in class anyway, was that of the Greek temples such as the Parthenon. It's located in Athens, up at the Acropolis itself. Magnificent size, 70-foot columns, if you will, 222 feet in length, 74 meters in length, all designed for the worship of the goddess Athena. All right, so anyway, that's really neat here. Okay, let's go back to our notes here. Here's the sculpture. I was telling sculptures and the Parthenon, 74 meters in length. All right, now we're going to leave the Greeks for the time being here. In fact, we will not go back to them, but we're going into a different civilization. This will be your last chapter, by the way, before you have your first examination. But this civilization is called the Hellenistic civilization. Now, if we looked at the word that we had the last time we were together, Hellenic is Greek Greek, pertaining to the Greeks. Now, if we look at the word and a play on that word, Hellenistic here. Work on your pronunciation. Hellenistic civilization. Greek-like. And what this is in the Hellenistic civilization is kind of like a hybrid. It's a blend between the Greeks and a blend between other cultures, perhaps out of Persia, out of Macedonia. So it's a group of people, a hybrid type people. Now, the worst tragedy that the Greeks faced was their failure to solve their problems with political conflict. There will be many wars that take place from the time of the Peloponnesic War all the way until Philip of Macedon finally takes control of Greece itself. Alrighty, so anyway, let's move on to one of our wars in particular, and let's see here. And this war is referred to as the Corinthian War. It was a major war that took place from 394 BCE to 387 BCE. Athens set this one out as far as fighting Sparta. And what you're going to see is the competing sides with this. We get Sparta on one side, and competing against them was Corinth and Thebes. Athens took a minor role in this, and Athens did not fight Sparta. Athens did fight Thebes and allied itself with Corinth, but Athens did not participate in this war. Alrighty, and it's going to be a Spartan victory. But after this victory, for the Thebes were led by a person which is known as Epaminondas. And I wish you would remember that name. Let me get this squared up a little bit. Epaminondas. And Epaminondas attained victory over the Spartans, if you can believe that. And it's hard for me to imagine that, too. But he did so in the Battle of Leuctra, and this battle which took place in 371. And I don't know if I wrote the name out. I don't think I did. But Epaminondas was the leader of a military group which was referred to as the Theban Sacred Band. I've always thought that'd be a pretty good name for a rock band, even though I'm not interested in that sort of music, too. But this Theban Sacred Band was made up of 150 homosexual couples here. And nevertheless, they were able to defeat the Spartans, and when they did that, Epaminondas marched his army into Messenia and freed the Helots, the unfree slave laborers that were present there. Unfortunately, they would later be defeated by the Spartans in another battle which took place at Mantinea in the year 362, which I did not write that down for you. Here's the Battle of Leuctra here. All right, now I want to focus here as we start winding things down. This may be a little bit shorter lecture than what you had before. And while you're doing that, I need to, right while you're writing that down here, I need to thumb through the pages here. And if you'll notice the name here, Philip II of Macedon. Now, I've moved over into the next chapter, and I'll show you a likeness here of Philip II of Macedon. All right, this is what he looked like. His body was later, many years later, exhumed. And if you'll notice here, he has a damaged eye. He was struck in the eye with a crossbow bolt, and it took his eye. And anyway, but Philip II was a leader of Macedon. All right, I'm going to flip back to my map here, and if you look over my shoulder in this area right here, you can find where Macedon or Macedonia today is located. And that's where Philip was located. All right, now, Philip of Macedon would probably be recognized today as Philip the Great if it had not been for the achievements of his son. And I'm not going to tell you who his son is right now, and because that'll be the topic of our next lecture when we come in. But one of the things that Philip did, he created a professional army. And this professional army was an army that were not soldiers. We're not farmers, as we had in the hoplite army anyway. Now, Philip pioneered what was called the Macedonian phalanx. All right, so if we look at the Macedonian phalanx, here's the front here. Notice the sarissa, that's the spears that you had. And instead of having, like in the old phalanx with the Greeks, where you had the spears that were 10 or 12 feet in length, these spears here, the sarissa, these spears are 15, 18, or there have even been reports of them being like 22 feet in length. So obviously with a 22-foot spear, you cannot hold that with one hand, so that means you have to hold it with two hands. So your shield, your hoplon, has to be suspended around the neck. It hangs from the neck. Now in this Macedonian phalanx, it is formed of 16 by 16. That means 16 across in this fashion here. That means 16 such as this here. So if you do the multiplication on that, we get 16 times 16, that's 254, which is roughly the equivalent of the United States Army military company of men today. So anyway, that's kind of interesting with that too. Alrighty, so Philip. Now Philip defeated all rivals. He built a professional army, as I said a few seconds ago. Here, he used mobile cavalry, he used skirmishers. This was a completely different type of military organization here. Let's see here, he used spies, he used counter spies that would spread disinformation, spies that would go into the enemy line to spy on them and then report back to him. He had an elite cavalry group, which were called the Companions, which was his vanguard going into combat here. Alrighty, so anyway, I think I've got this pretty well covered here as far as Philip goes. Unfortunately for Philip was homosexual, by the way, and when I say homosexual, these men still had their wives or their prostitutes or their concubines, but nevertheless he was homosexual. And in the year 334, he was killed by a jealous homosexual former lover. And so anyway, that was the end of Philip. And now the Macedonian army, the army of Macedon, is going to fall into the hands of the 16-year-old son of Philip. And this individual, I'm not going to give you his name right now, is going to serve to be one of the finest military commanders of all time, one of the heroes of mine here. Unfortunately, he will die at the age of about 33, something on that order anyway. But anyway, that'll be the topic of our next discussion here, folks. All right, we've covered a lot of ground. We've got one lecture to cover. We're going to get into a lot of philosophy in this next lecture here, and I hope that won't bore you too badly. But nevertheless, a lot of ground to cover here. You need to keep up with this material here, folks, all right? Otherwise, it's going to be quite difficult to catch up on this and learn this in one night. Okay, thank you for your attention here, and goodbye.